MBFriends presents an introduction to the rational temperament. Part 2: Rationals and Relationships.
Rationals do not care to spend much of their time or energy making social connections. Not only do they find the rituals of dating slightly absurd, but they seem to have more difficulty than other temperaments engaging in play, which makes dating usually something of a trial for them. For most rationals, intellectual development seems to proceed at a faster rate than does the social development. They are often math whizzes and science eggs in high school and college, and they tend to prefer their books and computers to football games and prom dates. But even in young adulthood, rationals remain somewhat stiff and awkward when it comes to dating, and many show almost no interest in developing social graces or in being popular. While rationals will attempt to cover their lack of social skills by clowning around, they tend, on the whole, to be rather serious and cerebral, enjoying discussions of esoteric topics full of technical details, everything you wanted to know about chemical bonding and more, a pastime which the other temperaments are apt to find dreadfully dull. Sharing with their mates or spouses what they have on their minds is of primary importance to rationals. They are prone to initiate discussions with their mates on a wide variety of topics and to pursue them until the issue is clear, whether or not there is agreement. The issues they pursue with their mates are almost invariably abstract rather than concrete, issues such as theories of politics and economics, questions in ethics and religion, etc. This desire for intellectual sharing puts limits on the kind of mate that rationals are apt to choose. Because they are most comfortable dealing in the rare world of abstract communication, due to sheer numbers alone, with 85% of the population using concrete communication, it is difficult for them to even find a partner who shares that same abstract communication style. This desire will not be fulfilled in the event they are mated with either guardians or artisans, neither of whom are willing to pursue abstract topics either recurrently, or for more than a few minutes. So, if the desire for cognitive sharing is the rational's primary criterion for choosing a mate, he or she is prudent to choose another rational or an idealist who can fill the role of a mind mate. Even still, rationals seem to have eternal hope that one day they can prevail upon their mates to share their fascination with science and technology, and that they can shape up their loved one into being more logical in their thinking and speaking. Isn't this the way everyone should be?
Thus, generally speaking, dating for rationals is neither entertainment, as it is for artisans, social participation, as it is for guardians, nor deep bonding, as it is for idealists. Rather, dating for rationals is a sometimes difficult search for a person they deem worthy of their personal investment. An ENTJ and an INTJ are more systematic in this search for a mate than an ENTP and an INTP. An ENTP and an INTP, on the other hand, can be rather passive about the search, seeing the whole courtship process as perhaps more trouble than it's worth, and they are likely to settle down with the first person of quality who happens to show an interest in them, just to get the mating problem solved, which can ultimately be a short-term fix that leads to long-term regrets. Once in a relationship or marriage, it is frequently, and sadly, the case that rationals are misunderstood on one important point by their mates or spouses, who will accuse them of being cold and unemotional, and of seeming distant and unconcerned with their welfare. Rationals, for their part, are amazed that their way of relating and loving can be seen by their mates as aloof and uncaring, for they know what powerful passions surge within them, and how keenly interested they are in their mates. But the false impression, almost a stereotype, of rationals' coldness remains the source of much disappointment and conflict in their relationships and marriages. What's the cause of this misunderstanding, this discrepancy between appearance and reality? The answer lies in the combined strength of three of the rationals' core character traits. 1. Their abstractness, 2. Their need for efficiency, and 3. Their desire for autonomy.
In the first place, rationals spend much of their time absorbed in the abstract world of ideas, principles, theories, technologies, hypotheses, research models, system designs, and the like. When they aren't puzzling over a problem from work, they are studying other subjects, the Civil War, astronomy, photography, almost anything else, ever in the business of acquiring knowledge, and this makes them appear to be out of touch with the real world of much of family life. Making matters worse, NTs have a unique ability to concentrate on whatever problems they are trying to solve, and they are always working on solutions to problems, which can make them seem remote and preoccupied with their work, lost in thought, as if a million miles away even when sitting with their spouse in a living room. But there's the rub, because many husbands and wives feel humiliated having to ask their rational mate to pay attention to them, or to give time to the family. They want their rational mates to think of them and care about them of their volition, without having to be reminded as a spontaneous expression of love, and so they will wait with growing anger for the NT to offer interest or affection, and when this fails, they will accuse them of thoughtlessness or indifference. This is an all too common impasse in rationals relationships and marriages. Thus the problem is not that rationals are cold and inhuman, but that they are by nature both abstract and highly focused, and have to be reminded to get their nose out of their books, their technical journals and their computer files, to get out of their heads and join the family circle.
Secondly, rationals' obsession with efficiency figures into a familiar pattern problem in their relationships, namely, that NTs are reluctant to speak of love to their spouses, who are often hurt by the silence. It's not that NTs don't feel love for their mates, but they have a distaste for stating the obvious or being redundant, and so once they have indicated their feelings by choosing their mate, they are not apt to engage in sentimental love talk. Once the rational makes a commitment to a mate, the commitment stands until notified. Nothing more need be said. All too often, however, their mates come to believe that this lack of emotional expressiveness is due to a lack of emotion, and, again, rationals are accused of being cold and unromantic, or, worse, of selfishly regarding their own efficiency as more important than the feeling of their mates.
The third cause of the seeming coldness of rationals is their principled insistence on individual autonomy, both for themselves and for their mates or spouses. NTs allow no compromise when it comes to their own autonomy. They are the most self-directed and independent-minded of all the temperaments, and they resist, and resent, any and all forces that would coerce them into acting against their will, that would try to make them march to someone else's drum. Thus, if rationals detect in their mates' messages even the slightest pressure to behave in a socially acceptable way, or to have a better attitude, if they sense the slightest suggestion of social or moral obligation, they will balk and refuse to cooperate, not only on significant matters such as tending the children, or saying, "I love you," but also on seemingly trivial things such as cleaning up the kitchen, dressing for a party, or helping bring in the groceries. The refusal might take some form of silent, passive resistance, or an icy blast, but it is rare for any NT simply to follow orders without some word of protest, or gesture of self-assertion. On occasion, they might bite their lip and go along in order to avoid a quarrel, but they allow their autonomy to be abridged only under duress, and with growing annoyance.
Rationals love to spar over ideas and theories, but conflict on a personal level, quarreling and bickering over acceptable social behavior, for instance, or locking horns over matters of family or domestic control, from big things, like raising children, to little things, like taking out the garbage, is something rationals find destructive, and they will walk away from this kind of interaction, putting whatever psychological distance is needed between themselves and a cross, coercive mate. Personal dependence on alcohol, for example, is repellent to them, but so is interpersonal dependence. Rationals show little sympathy with mates who look to rationals to give them happiness or wholeness. Such people are sorely lacking in self-sufficiency, says the NT, and need to become whole in themselves, self-determined and self-possessed, for the rational to continue loving them. It is likely that an NT female will be attracted only by a mate who is as bright as she is, or at least by someone whose quality of mind she greatly admires. Obviously, this places the intelligent female NT in a position of limited choices. Male NTs have a slightly different standard concerning brain power. While they too prefer mates who are just as smart as they are, and unintelligent females actually turn them off, their attitude is more apt to be that, given other personal or domestic talents, their mate need not be quite their intellectual equal.
The rational's lack of possessiveness and reluctance to interfere with their mates makes a very nice fit with the artisan's freedom-loving nature. In the SPs, NTs find mates just as irreverent as they, not only just as willing, but NTs are even more so than the SPs to ignore socially accepted conventions. NTs admire SPs' interest in tools and tool skills, and at the same time they find in SPs an aptitude for fun, improvisation, spontaneity, even mischief, which can help get NTs out of their heads and show them how to get go and wing it. Rational need to learn how to play, and artisans love to spread their playfulness around. Of course, if pushed too hard, SP fun and games can come to seem frivolous to NTs, but, more than this, SPs can also disappoint their NT mates by their general lack of interest in the internal, abstract world. NTs enjoy expounding their theories and hypotheses, and describing their latest inventions and paradigms to their mates at time. In fact, these breakfast table conversations can turn into lengthy, highly detailed lectures, but is very difficult for NTs to hold SP's attention on such abstract subjects, and rationals are quick to note when interest weans, and their mates begin turning the conversation to more concrete, down-to-earth matters.
While guardians won't usually take the lead on merrymaking, they do offer rationals one invaluable gift as a mate, a stable, reliable center in the home. Preoccupied as they are in their ivory towers, NTs often lose touch with the everyday workings of family life, and an SJ mate happily steps in to see that things are done and that the details of running the home are taken care of. SJs also see to it that NTs have a social life, not one as varied and exciting as that whipped up by an SP, perhaps, but a full, enjoyable, often family-oriented social life. NTs and SJs share a strong sense of loyalty to close friends and family, and SJs make sure their NT mates remember to take part in the social functions and family traditions they might otherwise forget. A problem for this pairing is that for the guardians, no matter how intelligent in the concrete logistical roles, they have little interest in the rationals, abstract world of systems analysis and technological design. NTs may not need a great deal of intellectual interaction from their mates, particularly if they are able to discuss their brainstorms with their colleagues at work. A satisfying social life, family life, and sexual life may be enough for them. But rationals with concrete mates, guardians or artisans, sometimes sense they're missing some vital connection.
Two rationals married to each other do not have the problem of dealing with mixing concrete communication with abstract communication. Two rationals are likely to be fascinated by each other's research and discoveries, by their tools and technologies, and when they find the time to come together, they have intense discussions, logical, esoteric, critical, and competitive. This competition can get rough at times. NTS will go for the jugular in the heat of the argument, but the main trouble in NT-NT relationships is just the opposite. That each tends to stay absorbed in his own or her own cognitive world, each forgetting to notice the other, and thus doubling the distance to be overcome in the relationship. Rationals married to other rationals need to learn how to get away from their work and meet each other on a personal level.
Marriage to an idealist is probably the best option for a rational. NTs and NFs share an abiding interest in the abstract, internal world, and so can find with each other a companionship of ideas, a mutual love of insights and concepts, even a similar fluency for the abstract language, that bonds them securely. At the same time, NFs bring a personal warmth to their relationships which appeals to the analytical, self-controlled NTs, and helps them put aside their work and take time for a personal life. Conflicts, of course, are inherent in all relationships, and even so with the NT-NF relationship. If sharing ideas with an NT means arguing over definitions, logical categories, and necessary consequences, it is onerous to NFs, who are willing to engage in such debates for a short period of time, and only if the discussion remains friendly. And conflict between the NT's cool resistance to showing emotion and the NF's desire for emotional expressiveness is an endless problem in their relationships. Though one that usually overshadowed by these two temperaments' rare compatibility. As always, please remember that learning about an individual's temperament is only a starting, not ending point, to learning about that unique individual. In the next and final video of the Rational series, we will explore Rational's childhood, adulthood, and leadership. The source content of this video is Please Understand Me Too by David Gersey. For more information, please go to mbfriends.com.